The number one key to recover from mental health problems is acceptance. Hi, my name is Andre, and 2 years ago I experienced burnout, which led to depression. And when it all started, I told to myself, that cannot be me, burnout is for someone else. I haven't even worked long enough, which is kind of true. So for a very long time, I told to myself, no, I'm gonna kind of get out of it, solve these issues by myself. But after a while, I realized, no, I cannot do that. So I went to therapy. And I went to the therapist with the intention of, whatever you do, fix me. I'm willing to accept anything. So just to recover and then go and get back to life. And I told to myself, well, I'm not ashamed that I'm going to therapy, and that helps me to recover faster, which is kind of true partially, but I did not realize that I also was in denial and not accepting things back then. And the deeper I got into therapy, we started to talk about issues that are connected with what I was going through and stuff like that. We started to get deeper into these, and I realized, okay, that is actually a point. Now, this topic is ticked off the list, we can continue. And I felt a lot of times very impatient. I was like, yeah, it's interesting that you talk about childhood and stuff, but how do we get me back on my feet? All this lasted for maybe half a year. It was up and down cycles kind of things. I went to therapy, I felt better about myself, or I felt better in general a bit. And then I reached a new low, and then things went down again and things became more difficult. And then after half a year or so, where I told to myself I cannot do it anymore, I cannot function in the real world anymore. I had to give up my job, I had to focus on myself, and then I had the expectation, now all this issue is solved. I don't have outside factors anymore that stress me anymore. So I should feel better, right? But that was not the case either. And only when I reached the lowest point where I completely gave up and I couldn't handle it anymore, and I told to myself, okay, you win, whoever you are. Only then I realized that all the time I was trying to keep on or heal the facade that I was trying to keep up in the outside world. What happened before was I went to therapy and I was talking about it with my friends and everybody else, kind of open about it, but to show that I'm still in control of my life, to show that I'm going to therapy, look at me, I'm fixing myself, but internally I was still not accepting it. And when we not accept it, we make the wrong adjustments. So I was thinking, believing about myself that I'm somewhere there and I can make bigger steps to get out of it, instead of accepting the reality that I'm on the lowest point and that the adjustments that I need to make are much smaller. And only then I became a clear picture of what was really going on, and only then I could kind of break the shell or break the facade and see that behind that was my true self. That might sound very voodoo-like, but it's not. Maybe people who are watching this have experienced that, and I would like to hear about your experience. But for me, that was the absolute changing point, because from then I realized the way out of it is not by running faster and from the bottom up, but internally to see what went wrong and who am I and how do I get these pieces back. And only from this acceptance point I could start to reach, or I could start to improve in very slower steps. It took me a very long time to be able to talk about this in a video, but it is important because I see a lot of people struggling with exactly that. And we are really good in denying things, and we are really good in keeping these facades on or playing roles in our day-to-day life. We all kind of play roles. You are not the same person. Most probably some people can, and I really admire them, but you most probably are not the same person to your boss as you are to your friends, to your partner, as you are to someone, some acquaintances that you met 2 or 3 times. So playing this role is in a way a part of our day-to-day life. But when the role becomes more important than what's going on inside us, that can become a real big issue. And when we are willing to break this facade or accept our real situation, only then we can make adjustments to get out of it. For me, it was a very painful experience. It was a very long way to get there. I believe that if I wasn't as stubborn or as persistent as I am, I wouldn't get there, or I would get there faster maybe. But also what I was talking in the first place, fake acceptance, or thinking that, oh, I'm interested in that, so do whatever you need to do. Telling to my therapist, do whatever you need to do to fix me, was kind of also standing in my way, because then I was denying that, oh, this all can also be my problem. I was listening to audiobooks to a guy who was telling about his experience of therapy, and he was telling about how he's sitting in front of the therapist or even psychiatrist, and his internal thought was like, okay, the therapist, I feel this way, but the therapist wants to hear this, so I better tell him this. And I'm like, listening to this, I'm like, haven't you understood anything? And only half a year later, I realized that all this I have experienced myself and not even realizing this myself. So there are a lot of layers of resistance, a lot of self-defense and everything to get to that point, but I think it is very important to realize the status quo, how it is. I really would like to have a conversation about this, so please feel free to comment here and share your experience. Maybe you see it completely different. Maybe you say your experience with burnout, you cannot relate to that, but what I know for sure is that we need to have a conversation about this, because so many people suffer in this and are in denial and tell themselves that I don't have any problems, I have a good job, I have a family, I have a house, whatever. I shouldn't have problems, but that doesn't change the fact of what's going on inside your head if you struggle with this. So thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think about it.